Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. I'm Sam Fisk, filling in with a quick setup for today's episode. In the conversation you're about to hear, King's Crowd founder and CEO Chris Lustrino sits down with Frank Peluso and Bob Vanech of Hill Road Pictures to talk about their upcoming R-rated comedy, So I'm the Crazy One. Frank brings a deep Hollywood background, including work with Nick Cassavetes, while Bob comes from the media, creator economy, and equity crowdfunding world. Together, they're trying to build a different kind of film project, one that combines traditional movie production with content creators, audience ownership, and a crowdfunding model designed to let fans and investors participate directly in the upside. So with that, here's Chris Lustrino with Frank and Bob.
Frank and Bob, thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thanks, Chris.
My pleasure, Chris.
So listen, for those who don't know you, let's get some backgrounds. Frank, we'll start with you. Would love to hear a little bit about your background, and then Bob, we'll get into it with you as well.
So my background began at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. And then I took some directing classes at UCLA. And after that, I got a job in the mailroom at ICM, which at the time was one of the big three agencies. There was CAA, William Morris, and ICM. So I was in the agent trainee program. And so you're working for different agents every day. And they had like an incredible list of people like Denzel and Julia Roberts and Richard Gere and Mel Gibson. So Denzel's actually coming into the office. So it was like a pretty cool job, the first job. And you really get to learn every different aspect of the industry because one day you're working for the movie star director, and then you're working for the director, agent, or the guy who represents writers. So you really understand from the ground up every aspect of the business because you're delivering their mail every day and you're answering their phone calls. So I started off there. I got a job at Warner Brothers after that. I worked for a television writer there, which was great experience. From that, I got a job working for David Ayer, who wrote the movie Fast and the Furious. He wrote he started the franchise essentially because he wrote the first one, and he did a Training Day with Denzel, and everybody wanted to work with him at the time because Denzel won the Oscar, and so his next movie was with Christian Bale. And I helped him put that together. That was his first movie as a director. And then he went on to direct Fury with Brad Pitt and Suicide Squad. So I worked for him for a couple of years. And then my big thing came when I got to work for Nick Cassavetes. And we were working on The Notebook. And Nick was a real mentor for me. And he really wanted it to be that kind of a relationship where he actually taught me how to write. And he taught me how to direct actors, and he taught me how to produce movies. And so I produced his film Alpha Dog. And then we went on to make 8 or 9 films together. And he's one of the producers on the movie that we're talking about today. So I'm the Crazy One. He loves the script, and he's got a really cool part in the movie too that he's going to act in for us.
Phenomenal. Bob, would love to hear a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I'm on the opposite end of the media business. I've been in digital media for a couple of decades, mainly as a C-level executive, CFO or chairman. And my main remit has always been secure the bag. So I was like, Bob, go get us the money. And it started in New York in my late 20s. I raised $22 million for a telecom company where I founded, and I put in the first $100,000 and then raised $22 million. And this is back when money was falling out of trees, and if you had a wheelbarrow, you could catch it. And I was lucky enough to catch that. I then moved to LA for that company and stayed away from the media business, totally stayed out of movies. But in 2008, I'm hanging out in Venice, and this is sort of at the dawn of the growth of the YouTube networks and the YouTube channels. And I'm wearing a suit, and everyone else is wearing gray hoodies. And I got to know some of the founders of Maker Studios, which ultimately was sort of like the pioneer of multi-channel YouTube networks. And I worked with the founders there that were, I'll say, not being treated fairly, I think, by the traditional investors. And we helped some of them leave and forced the sale to Disney and founded a company called Zealot Networks. Raised about $70 million for Zealot Networks. It was one of the first digital media influencer first sort of Hollywood disruptor companies. And we had sports media culture and a ton of YouTubers. So I've been kind of hanging around in and around the creator economy for a while. We also bought a bunch of music assets. From there, I joined as the first employee and founding CFO of Treble Music, where I still hang my hat. So I technically am the chief revenue officer at Treble Music, which is a digital music company that did a big equity crowdfund a few years ago. But I've been dabbling in equity crowdfunding for about a decade. We can talk more about that as we go on. But that's kind of my background. And for this movie, the funny story is Frank called me. He's like, Bob, I need $6 million. And I'm like, well, I don't have it lying around. I probably could cobble together $1 million for you, but I don't invest in movies. But I started thinking about, like, is there a way maybe to use equity crowdfunding for this film and use my influencer content creator Rolodex for the movie? And when I posed the question to Frank of, how do you feel about doing a $6 million concurrent Reg D 506C with the Reg CF? Of course, he didn't know what those letters meant. He's like, if you get me $6 million, I think we're in business. I called him. I was like, so Frank, if I'm the guy bringing in the money, do I get a credit for like finance consultant or friend of the writer? He's like, Bob, that's called a producer. So I am the producer of So I'm the Crazy One.
That's it. If you're a producer, you find a story and then you find money. Your job is basically done. That's really all you have.
Yeah, that's right,
Frank. You can do the whole movie stuff. Just find a script and then find the money.
And
that's it.
Well, let's get into the movie. So this is pretty cool. So you guys find yourself here now raising money to get this movie off the ground. And I'm into this because something I have personally felt is that the great comedies and even the great rom-coms have kind of fallen off because all of these streaming platforms just like produce lots and lots of output, but not like really well done, thoughtful movies. So we find ourselves watching the 80s and 90s comedies and rom-coms because we just can't find good ones that exist anymore. And when I saw So I'm the Crazy One, as you put it, an R-rated comedy, it immediately hit for me because I was like, this is going to be a quality, fun comedy movie that's done well. So let's talk about it. Frank, what was the inspiration for this movie and what is it about?
So the movie is about a guy who cheats on his wife and he makes a mistake. They've been together for 10 years, but one night he makes a mistake and it just destroys his life. So she finds out about it. She throws him out. He goes from living on the nicest street in Savannah in this beautiful house and he's got a good job. Then he loses his job because she sends out a Christmas card about her cheating husband all over the office. She sends it to everyone they've ever knew. So he loses all of his friends. He loses his job.
Inspired by a true story, Frank. That's
inspired by a
happened.
true story. This person in another city like Savannah, which shall remain nameless because I actually know some people who got this Christmas card about the cheating husband. So it was a little bit inspired by that. So he gets a job bartending, and every night the men come into the bar and they tell him about their problems, women problems mostly. So he's sort of an unofficial couples therapist to the men who frequent the bar. So he finds out that the judge is angry with him, that he hasn't paid his alimony for a few months, and he's going to get thrown in jail if he doesn't come up with 12 grand very quickly. And that might as well be $1 million. He has no way of doing it. But at about this time, a couple of his buddies from the bar also get caught cheating on their girlfriends. The girlfriends insist that they find a reputable couples therapist who can get down to the root of their infidelity. So they enlist the bartender to pretend he's a couples therapist, to tilt the relationship back into the men's favor and convince their women that they are, in fact, the crazy one. And it's called So I'm the Crazy One.
Love the concept and definitely plenty of room for hilarity in that. Do you have cast members in mind? And from like a production standpoint, when are you going to start working on this? How do you see it kind of come together on that front?
Well, so I started working on this in November of 24. I started writing the script. So I've been knee deep in this movie for a long time. Bob has been with me since June. So the script was basically written at that point. And when I sent him the script, he asked the question, could we hire content creators? And I said, this is not a Meryl Streep movie. So you actually could. It's a comedy. So a lot of comedians have content that they put out on YouTube or Instagram. And if you can fill the movie with as many comedians as you want, because it doesn't need to have Marlon Brando. It just needs to be funny. So it really lends itself to that. And I had made a film 10 years ago, which was the first film that I directed, which Nick Cassavetes also produced. And they insisted at the time that I have at least one content creator with a real presence and a big following. And Bob said, why don't we flip that metric on its side? Let's have almost the entire cast have a massive social media following. And then at the top, if you need to hire some real actors or some A-list comedians, we can do that. But give me the bottom 25 cast members and let me get to work on casting those people, because Bob actually knows the YouTube audience.
So, Frank, if I could just jump in there and kind of tell what was going through my head as I described that. So, Chris, I have a unique distinction of, in the calendar year 2025, probably raising more money using equity crowdfunding for YouTubers than anybody else. So you've got like Mr. Beast and a couple of the big guys up there raising tons of institutional money. But I found a niche within the YouTube community of content creators that needed Reg CF money. They needed about 1 million to 5 million bucks. And using the Gigastar platform, I introduced them to a casino influencer with under 1 million followers. And we did a $2.1 million Reg CF in under 30 days. And he's like, thank you, sir. May I have another? And we did another $2 million Reg CF just on the back of that. And then the Gigastar platform that we ran it on, I had nudged their CEO to do their own Reg CF. So while I'm reading this script, like, these are my non-day job pursuits. I'm hanging out with all these YouTubers and content creators. And I'm like, how'd you like to be in a movie? How'd you like to be? And they all said yes. And all of a sudden, before any financing other than the seed money that Frank and I were able to get to put together, everybody's saying yes. And all of a sudden we go 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million audience from the very first people that are taking bit parts in the movie. And I know that if you have under 1 million following or under 1 million customers, and you do a good Reg CF, you could raise, or a good Reg D, you can raise that money by going to your audience or customers. And so what we decided to do, to show you, like, the fact that I don't know anything about doing a movie is probably why we're doing so well. In addition to a world-class script that Frankie wrote, I was like, why don't we give a third of the movie away to the cast? And why don't we give a third of the movie away to the investors? And we started researching it, and usually and then the filmmakers can keep the rest. Usually the studios keep like 80 to 90%, and the investors have all this last money in, and they screw over all the early money. And the more I dug into it, and I've raised about $250 million for the 6 or so successful companies that I've run and operated, I'm like, let's look at how they raised money and grew, and we basically created 2 classes of stock. We have an early preferred class and membership units of the LLC. And other than the very first couple million into the company, you're going to have some security with the tax credit. Everybody gets the same shares. Everybody gets the same stock. None of this back end, tail end, Hollywood BS accounting.
It does get complicated.
Yeah, and as I described that to Frank, the natural fit with the content creators audience was evident. The absolute, like, jigsaw puzzle coming together with a Reg D and Reg CF at the same time, that all came together. But then Frank's like, Bob, do you realize that my mentor, Nick Cassavetes, his father, a guy named John Cassavetes, is the pioneer of both ensemble cast movies and sharing the wealth? Back to you, Frank. Tell that story.
Yeah, so he was a movie star in the 1960s, and he directed a film in the 1950s for this producer, Stanley Kramer, who was one of the biggest producers, and Stanley recut the movie. And he was so upset about it that he decided, I'm just going to make my own movies. And so in the late 1950s, the next year, he made a film called Shadows, with John Marley. He was the guy who played the producer in The Godfather, where they find the horse head in the bed. So, but he made all these great movies that, his wife was the star of most of them, Jenna Rollins, who was an Academy Award winner, multiple Golden Globe. So they were making the movies in Nick's house when Nick was a little kid. And he lived up on Mulholland Drive. And so John would write a script, and Nick would come down for a glass of milk in the middle of the night and be like, so what do you think of this script? What do you think of, wait, let's read this scene. What do you think of this? And so they were really making the movies at the house. And he said, a lot of times he would get a big fee from doing a movie like The Dirty Dozen, but sometimes those funds would run out. So he told the crew, everybody's going to own a piece of this movie. And when he made a film called A Woman Under the Influence, the movie made $14 million in 1974. It was nominated for a few Academy Awards, including Best Actress. And everybody on the crew got a check for $70,000. And so Bob said, that's exactly what we're going to do. Everybody is going to share in this, and they're truly going to share in it because of the creative accounting that Hollywood has. They can tell you that we made Jaws for $12 million. It's made $400 million, but we still haven't turned a profit yet. I apologize. And they can get away with that. But Bob has come up with a couple of metrics, including the way the SEC operates, as well as what you use for your music app. Why don't you get into that with him, Bob?
Well, so actually, just to keep moving. So Frank, question for you. One of the things that we kind of see out there in the landscape right now is that, some of these big budget films are kind of struggling, especially when they go to the movies, right? I think The Mandalorian made as much as these like low cost horror movies that are just crushing it. It sounds like, with your model, right? $6 million is not a lot for the production of a movie, in my experience, but there's potentially a really good opportunity for a return here. So talk to me about kind of the positioning of the R-rated comedy and its opportunity for upside and why that excites you.
Well, they asked Judd Apatow, who's one of the biggest R-rated comedy directors in the world, 40-year-old version, movies like that, a lot of Seth Rogen films. They asked him why they're not making them anymore. And he said, I think the pendulum's going to swing back. And for the last couple of weeks, I've been working on a movie that Judd is directing here in Savannah. And so the pendulum has swung back. He's making a movie with Glenn Powell here and this comedian Stavros, who's hysterical. And the movie's hilarious. So he was saying that it's going to swing back. He said that a year and a half ago, right at the time I started writing the script. And here he is making a film, which I'm honored to be working on in a very limited capacity. But still, it's been great to watch him work. So they haven't been making them for whatever reason. I don't know if it's people have been afraid to say certain things, that political correctness, but they really haven't been making them. They have a certain program that they make. You have to follow this because the studios are all owned by corporations now. So it's not like it was in the 1970s when they were making all those comedies, but they're making them again. I'm acting in one right now. So that's good to know that they're actually doing it. And the movies that you were talking about this weekend, the ones that beat The Mandalorian, Obsession and Backrooms. Those two films came out this weekend. One of them, Obsession or Backrooms, made $117 million worldwide in one weekend. So that was made. Bob, will you kind of walk them through that and the movie that Markiplier did?
So a couple things. At the very highest level, we love the idea of going to the crowd for this film because unlike most medtech companies or hard to understand SaaS platforms or some new AI gadget, this is a very understandable product. It's a movie. Secondly, movies get made, sold, and monetized really quickly. Venture funds started off with, we have a 5 to 7 year horizon for our fund. Now it's 7 to 12 years to get your money back on a startup to find an exit. Public markets, of course, have become difficult over the past 6 or 7 years. So the model that we're looking at here is $6 million is plenty for a comedy with all of the economies of scale that we're going to have. Filming this in Georgia, we're looking at some unique partnerships in the state of Georgia that we haven't announced yet to make this happen. And because all of the content creators own a piece of it, and we don't need to give millions to any big star names, $6 million is the right number. We might upsize it to 9 based on demand, but $6 million is the right number. With the audience following of our content creators, 200 million following so far of the people that we've already cast, probably closer to 250 to 270 once we're done casting. That is 5 times as many followers or subscribers as 3 other films that we've benchmarked. The first one actually was a few months ago called Iron Lung. Markiplier is a YouTube guy, horror film, or it's got a little sci-fi thriller to it. They self-funded it. It was a few $1 million budget. It's already surpassed, I think, 60 or 65 million at the box office. It's projected, based on international and digital and other distribution, it's going to clear about 100 million, 30x return for the investors. With Obsession and Backrooms, each has its own similar story, that there was a digital content creator around it. They each went a slightly different way by partnering up with some major distributors, which is something that we're going to consider. And some are saying that Backrooms, based upon the way they did a cool digital build-up in advance, and they had this embedded audience, and then they brought in some big-name actors and some other Hollywood types. They're thinking this thing can do 200, 300, 400 million on what was I think a $3 million production budget, and I think they've now put 7 to 10 into the marketing. So we have similar aspirations to keep the budget low, leverage our audience to distribute it, possibly partner with a streaming platform selling direct to consumer, but also nudge the theaters to say, we're going to put young people in seats because this is a young people, no holds barred comedy. And what that does is it yields a quarterly dividend that quickly, all of a sudden, a Reg CF investor or a Reg D investor from the crowd, who typically does not see a return on their investment for years, they're likely to see in year one, they're going to see a tax write-off. That's another thing. We're a membership. They get a tax write-off in year one of a percentage of the LLC. Then we get a tax credit from the state of Georgia, so that secures their investment. And then we expect in 2027 into 2028 to be paying quarterly dividends.
Essentially a rev share, or is it an actual dividend?
It's a membership unit partner distribution on a K1, just like the real estate investments.
And is there a cap to how much one makes? Like, are you saying you'll get 4 to 6 times your money, or is it just
Nope.
It's uncapped?
It is greenfield. Look, everybody owns the same. It's going to own the same units. The first 2 million in under Reg D get these preferred units secured by the tax credit. Other than that, and that will then convert into traditional membership units once the movie is made, we all have the same stock. Everybody is a membership unit of the LLC, and we're going to share it evenly. And then, of course, we move on to the sequel. Current working title, So He's the Crazy One, the clapback. This is where the women get the revenge on the dudes. So anyway, we're working on that one as well.
So, Frank, in terms of, once the money is raised, just give us a sense of like what it looks like, to go through the actual production process of the movie, how long that takes, the pieces that are involved in that, and then from there, how long does it take to actually get to market with the movie?
So if everything falls into place, we're looking at a November 2nd production date to begin production and to be finished by December 18th. So we'd work basically through Thanksgiving. We'd have Thursday, Friday off. A friend of mine, Holt McCallany, who's in this movie, who's a phenomenal actor. He was in the last Mission Impossible film that came out last summer. He was one of the lead roles. So he did a movie in Savannah, and they had basically the same production schedule, a little less, but we're looking at roughly 25 days. The Judd Apatow movie, that was 46 production days. That's a very big movie. So 25 production days, about 5 to 6 weeks of production, and 6 weeks of pre-production. So if everything goes well, we'll be in pre-production in September, be wrapped by the end of the year. It's going to take me 90 days to edit the movie. I think we'll do some previews for audiences, because even as Steven Spielberg says, my only boss is the audience sitting right behind me. And that's who you really have to think about. So if they laugh, it works. If they don't, it didn't work. It's very simple in a comedy. Nothing else matters. So yeah, so if we take 90 days to edit, have a preview with a real audience, we could have this movie out next June.
So, for an investor who's kind of like on the line, they're interested in what you're doing, but maybe this is their first time kind of investing in a movie, I'll give you both the last word. What do you want them to know about getting involved in this project?
Let me address it from someone who's done a ton of Reg CFs and tech startups. Number one, this is one of the first investments that I've been able to be part of that has downside protection, significant downside protection for the first money in, that being the Georgia tax credit. It also has an immediate return of capital provided that we lose money in the first year, which we will do because we have to invest in the film. And part of those losses, provided the investor has an offsetting gain somewhere or ordinary income, you'll actually get a return. Unlike startups where you're buying common stock that just sits there for however long, there's going to be that for the seed investors. And then there's a very fast, likely return of money and an annuity stream of upside that could go on for a few years. So there's not this like long wait and see. There's not like a wing and a prayer, no downside protection. And the next million, we've raised $1 million so far. The next $1 million in will get those downside protections because the tax credit is going to be capped around $2.5 million. And we're only offering that to accredited investors, and they're also going to get a little bit of a coupon, preferred return, and a discount to the Reg CF price. We're also de-risking this by doing not just equity sharing with the cast and their fans, because we're going to do an imminent Reg CF. So the Reg D is going now, 506C, with public solicitation. You're going to start seeing ads. So I know that retargeting is so good, Chris, that your audience is likely to see an ad for this if we do our job. When you see it, know that campaign will run likely for 2 months. Then this summer, when we announce the cast is going to open up the Reg CF to the crowd. So in addition to that hedging, we are also going to do something called a creator's cut. Now, most people have heard of director's cut. That's where Frank gets really artistic and creates the director version of the film, and it's usually a long version of it. You can see behind the scenes, and you sell it on a Blu-ray or however your industry used to do that, Frank. We've decided to do expanded roles for all of our content creators. We're calling it the creator's cut because a typical comedy is between like an hour and a half and an hour and 20 minutes to fit into like the popcorn sweeping and the changing of the seats in the movie theaters. So you won't see comedies more than 2 hours or less than 90 minutes. It's typical what you see. But we're going to do a slightly elongated version, call that the creator's cut, and give all of our cast members the chance to sell the film, the creator's cut version, direct to consumer. So the fallback to the fallback to the fallback, or the added layer of revenue, is the 200 to 250 million fanatics who are watching their favorite content creator now act probably in one of their first movies. There'll be a chance to buy that longer private creator's cut with a little bit of merch, a hat, maybe an autograph script, something like that. And we're packaging that together, and we have yet to choose a distribution partner on that. But YouTube is doing it. Shopify, believe it or not, is looking to do this. A company called Fourth Wall is doing it. So we haven't chosen yet who our partner is. But these are some of the monetization things where my business background is coming into play to make sure that there's other levels of de-risking this investment. It's not an all or nothing bet. I would say that's the most unique thing for any investor to take away who's ever written a check for a Reg A Plus, a Reg D, or a Reg CF, that we've really de-risked this and thought through multiple revenue streams.
So the one comedy I made with Nick Cassavetes was called The Other Woman with Cameron Diaz. We made that on a $40 million budget. It made 196 worldwide. So I knew back then there was a hunger for this kind of movie, and that was 2014, and they kind of stopped making them. But the thing about writing screenplays, and I've been writing for 21 years, the most important thing adheres to the old adage of filmmaking, which is this: dazzle them in the end, and you've got yourself a hit. There is a phenomenal ending in this screenplay. And so when people see this movie, they're going to come out of the movie feeling great. They're going to be proud of the film. And I think it's a great opportunity.
That was Chris's conversation with Frank and Bob of Hill Road Pictures. If you liked what you heard today, you can learn more about Hill Road Pictures, So I'm the Crazy One, and the investment opportunity at kingscrowd.com. And as always, this is not investment advice. Please do your own research before making any investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and happy investing.